We're going to go back and get back in the book of Isaiah and chapter 19. Now, we've been speaking, up until now, we've been speaking on the judgment of Egypt. The Assyrian conquest proved that all the many gods that Egypt had back then were no help, nor any of their mediums, their wizards, or anything. God just pulled a complete triumph over what they had they thought was the wisdom of the Egyptian leaders, because, you know, what they had worked for a while, but not when God set against it. Now, in Egypt back then, there were 42 provinces in Egypt, and each of these provinces were called a nome, N-O-M-E, all thrown into a complete disarray. They were fighting among themselves and each other. We talked about it before, if y'all remember, the Nile River, the source of Egypt's economy, all its streams, all its canals were drying up. It caused a lot of hardship and a lot of business to shut down for farmers and fishermen, even the cloth makers, because they couldn't make the material to grow the stuff to make the cloth out of. You know, a people known for their wisdom, you know, they used to think they were a real smart people. Well, they no longer knew what to do with any of this stuff, as we have been talking about. They were astray of God. Their leaders, they were stumbling. I mean, them guys were stumbling and fumbling around. I think it looked like Egypt was being run by a bunch of drunks, because these guys, they didn't know what to do. They didn't have a clue. They were just, you know, throwing water at anything they could, trying to get something to catch, you know. God allowed the destruction of their political stuff, of their state unity, their economy, their religion, and whatever wisdom they possessed. He proved it all to be wrong. Made Egypt a very easy target for Assyria. And as well, you know, we're going to see as we go along eventually, and the prophecy will fulfill, Jesus is going to one day establish with Egypt again. And one day Egypt will worship God again. It ain't today, but Isaiah said it was going to happen. So we'll see what happens if we live long enough. All right, verse number 16. We're going to start there. In that day, Egypt will be like women. It will be afraid and fear because of the waving of the hand of the Lord of hosts, which he waves over it. In that day refers to the future. Again, we're doing prophecy. And so we're going to be talking about things that hadn't even come close to happening yet. And it says that these folks are going to be like women. In other words, their condition is going into the great tribulation period. This is what it's going to be for them, meaning that they're going to be weak people. They're going to be fearful. They're going to be helpless. They're going to be unable to fight. They're going to be trembling against everything, because they're going to be trembling against the judgment that God has put on them. They're going to be super vulnerable, and it's just a complete reversal of the strength and everything that they had before for these people. You know, God told them he was going to do it. He warned them he was going to do it. They didn't want to change nothing. They weren't going to change nothing. And so God went ahead and took care of his business, okay? Something for us to consider, you know, something for us to consider. I was thinking the other morning, I was out, I got a new puppy, and I was out with this little puppy, you know, taking care of our morning stuff, and he come running over to me, and I had a little snack for him, and he was jumping up and down, and I told him to sit about 3 times. Well, he sat down, you know. He ain't but 8 weeks old, right? And so he sat down, and I gave him his little snack. I told him to do it again, I gave him another one. And so now he's got to where he kind of does it pretty good. And I'm thinking, that dog's 8 weeks old. And he minds. I've been a Christian for over 20-something years, and I don't mind. Well, what is wrong with this picture? And it ain't just me. Some of y'all can't mind either. You know? And why is that? I mean, we're smart. We're supposed to be one of the smart. We're humans. We are the smartest thing supposed to be that God put on earth. He gave us these great minds, these really cool opposable thumbs where we can pick knives up off the floor, and we can't do what he asks. And he lays it out right here for us. We need to remember some of this stuff. And when we're having all this drama that comes into our lives, and we're like, why is this happening? Why is it happening? Go look in the mirror. Pretty much that's going to be your reason why. It's not what everybody else is doing to you. Most of it's going to be what you do to yourself. So we need to remember that, plain and simple. All right, verse 17. And the land of Judah will be a terror to Egypt. Everyone who makes mention of it will be afraid of it himself because of the counsel of the Lord of hosts, which he has determined against us. Some of this stuff may seem like today, everyone's against you. The land of Judah will be in terror. And it's kind of that way over there now. See, today in Cairo, if you see pictures over there, they got buildings and stuff over there. They got sandbags still all around them and everything. I mean, it kind of looks like a war zone over there because it pretty much kind of is at any given moment. They're sandbagged, they're protected, they're boarded up against bombing, against enemy attacks and all of that stuff. And so, there's a terror in Egypt. And those people live pretty scared because they don't really know what's going to happen from one minute to the next. And it all goes right back to this stuff. God said, I told you, if you do what I asked you to do, I'd bless you. And so that's us. Sometimes we live in terror. Sometimes we sandbag our lives, don't we? Oh, y'all are going to be strong and not admit to any of that stuff tonight. That's okay. I know better, And we sandbag ourselves up. We board our walls up. We don't let people invade everything. What are we scared of? What we're scared of is that we're going to get what we deserve because we don't listen. That's the main thing. Just saying. Verse 18. In that day, 5 cities of the land of Egypt will speak the language of Canaan and swear by the Lord of hosts. One will be called the city of destruction. In that day, it's talking about again. In the future, it's coming to, going to be a complete fulfillment of this prophecy. One will be called the city of destruction. Which one? Well, whichever one God chooses, And speaking the languages of Canaan. In other words, things are going to change. Things are going to change over there. They're going to be speaking different, but things aren't going to get better because the people are not changing. They're still not changing. Even though they've been told and they've been warned and they see what's going on, they're still not changing. What does the Bible say? The Bible says that we're hard-headed and a stubborn people, right? God, ain't it the truth? Ain't it the truth? All right, verse 19 and 20. In that day there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and the pillar to the Lord in its border. And it will be for a sign and for a witness to the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they will cry to the Lord because of the oppressors, and he will send them a Savior and a mighty one, and he will deliver them. Remember now, we're talking prophecy. These are things yet still to happen. After the Lord, altar to the Lord it talks about. Now, there's some people, some of these cults actually will tell you that pyramid, one of them pyramids over there, is this altar to the Lord. No, it is not. A pyramid is neither an altar or it's not a pillar either. What it is it's a monstrous mausoleum for them to bury kings and queens in, and that's all it is. So it has nothing to do with this prophecy. So what's going to be the inside? What's going to sign? What's going to be the tail when all this happens? It will ultimately, what's going to be the sign of all this stuff and what's going to make the change in all this stuff, ultimately, I'm telling you, it's going to be the cross. Because these people are going to have to die to themselves. That's what it's about. They're going to have to accept Jesus. The place, Egypt, will have to look not at the crescent, You know, that over there in Egypt, they got this strip of land that's kind of shaped like this. It's called the Fertile Crescent. It's supposed to be one of the richest, most productive places, probably not today, but at one time was one of the most productive places on earth. It's what made Egypt so powerful and so rich, you know. And no longer, they can't look at that. That crescent ain't helping them. All they got to look at now for what they live is for themselves, which, Lord, is that not the hardest thing there is for a human? One, to look at ourselves, and the other is to find fault in who we are. We're such a prideful lot. We don't really want to admit those things. But I'm going to tell you something. If there's going to be change, there's got to be accountability, you know. So we'll see. 21 and 22. Then the Lord will be known to Egypt, and the Egyptians will know the Lord in that day. And he will make sacrifice and offering. Yes, they will make a vow to the Lord and perform it. And the Lord will strike Egypt. He will strike and heal it. They will return to the Lord, and he will be entreated by them and heal them. Things are going to get bad. Things are going to get better. Glorious is really the future that Egypt's got looking toward it. They're going to enter and enjoy the kingdom of the Lord with Israel, you know. It doesn't appear so today, but God says it's going to happen. There's much confusion and hatred as there is in that part of the world. And, you know, as far as Israel goes, too, that hatred's not just that part of the world. It's all over the world, you know. But God said he's going to make it right. And he's going to do it in his time. Verse 23. In that day there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria, and the Syrian will come into Egypt, the Egyptian into Assyria, and the Egyptians will serve with the Assyrians. Okay. This is not a road to captivity, so it doesn't mean the Assyrians are going to come in and take over everything again. What it is, it's the freeness for all of them to travel back and forth to Jerusalem. It's a freeness for them to go and to worship and to serve. That's what it's serve the King. And so that's what that's really talking about, that one day that freedom is going to be there. Verse 24. In that day, Israel will be one of three with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing in the midst of the land. Egypt's going to become exalted. It's going to be equal in the kingdom with these other two countries. You know, they're all going to be there together. They're going to worship together, and they're going to serve together. Whew, that's going to be a pretty good task, because I'm going to tell you something. These people don't even like the sight or the smell of each other over there right now, you know. So that's just some of that business that the Lord's going to have to take care of, but he said that he's going to. In verse 25, it's going to finish up chapter 19. Whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed is Egypt my people, and Assyria the work of my hands, and Israel my inheritance. This is the blessing that's yet to come. That, you know, the Lord's going to take care of all this. He's going to smooth all this thing over. He's going to make everything right, you know, with these nations. And, you know, as we know and we can tell, it will only be him to do it. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. It's going to only be him to get this done. So we just have to wait. Might happen in our lifetime. It might not. But the Lord said it is going to happen. So, all right. Now we got all 6 chapters of chapter 20. So, verse number 1. In the year that Tartan came to Ashdod, when Sargon, the king of Assyria, sent him, and he fought against Ashdod and took it. Not sure what all this means, but and nobody that I read really knows. Only thing I really found out that this king here, this Sargon dude, he's mentioned only one time in the Bible. It's in 2 Kings chapter 18. There's a lot of discussion on who this king Sargon is, and this being his only really mention besides right here in Isaiah. But his name is also, they found him to be called Sharaukin. And this Sharaukin guy, they can find, he has a whole lot of historical material. So I'm not sure what the purpose and the mention of this guy is right here now, but and exactly what this Ashdod was, but whatever it is, he took it over, okay? So I'm hoping that'll show up with us a little bit later. Verse number 2. At the same time, the Lord spoke to Isaiah, the son of Amoz, saying, Go and remove the sackcloth from your body, and take your sandals off your feet. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. Okay, calm down. I don't want you to think that Isaiah was streaking. He wasn't streaking, okay? We'll get to that part. And I think that this first verse, number 1, and this mention of these people was the timeline thing. That's what I get out of it. It was just kind of a timeline for us to know when some of this stuff was happening, when God talked to Isaiah. He asked for him to remove his outer tunic, okay? He was wanting him to show, basically, because that's something that they did drastic in mourning, okay? And so he asked him to do that. Now, when he took his tunic off, I'm going to tell you, all homeboy had on then was a loincloth, okay? And we'll see more about what happens when he's just not wearing his outer tunic here in just a minute. And the reason he did this is he wanted more attention focused on Isaiah. He wanted him a bigger audience. He wanted these people to really listen to him at this moment. And he was really trying to make a real more public point. It was against the common custom for folks to, really remove their outer tunic like that, but it wasn't something that was completely immoral. So what Isaiah was looking for, and I think the God's purpose in all this, he was looking for some kind of radical reaction. I think people were getting kind of drab about paying attention to him, but I think he was wanting to do something maybe a little shock therapy, on them to try to get their attention a little bit better. Verse number 3. Then the Lord said, just as my servant Isaiah has walked naked and barefoot 3 years for a sign and wonder against Egypt and Ethiopia. So he not only took his tunic off, but he took his shoe off, and he was just walking around barefoot. This guy was kind of walking around like John the Baptist did there a little bit, He just kind of looked like, instead of this prophet of God, he kind of looked like a wild man out there and doing all this. And when he took his tunic off, I can't remember if it's something I read or if it's going to be in these verses 4 to 6. That meant when he took his tunic off, his butt hung out, And evidently it wasn't bad for that to happen, but he had to have the front part on, okay? Because that was immoral. So when y'all see that he was walking around nude, I don't want y'all to have that picture in your mind, because that's not what he did. He was pretty daggone close, but that wasn't where he was. He was just doing this to try to shock therapy the people and wake them up a little bit. Verse number 3, maybe it says it here. We just did 3. Verse number 4. So shall the king of Assyria, So shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians as prisoners and the Ethiopians as captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. Walking through Israel to let them know what would happen to Egypt, that things were going to get bad. It was a sign and it was a wonder to the people. Again, like I said, this is just shock therapy, trying to get their attention. They were taking these captives. They were young and old, and evidently they were making some of these people do the same thing, and it was kind of a shame to Egypt, because I think maybe God was trying to show them what a shameful people that they were and that they had been, and that what they said was a reflection of who they were. So, some wild things going on back then, you know what I'm saying? All right, verse 4, 5, and 6. Then they shall be afraid and ashamed of Ethiopia, their expectation, and Egypt, their glory. And the inhabitants of this territory will say in that day, surely such is our expectation, wherever we flee for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria, and how shall we escape? You know, all of these things that added up, going back to verse 4, 5, and 6, it was all just to really show Egypt. And the whole point of a lot of this stuff that's going on is to show them nobody can do for you. They think they're going to get help from everywhere. They think that they're smart enough to help themselves. None of this stuff is working out for them. Everything that's going on, everything that they should be seeing, you know, and everything that's happening, it's just to show them the only thing that's going to help y'all is God. And that's it. And that's the whole message, you know. Egypt was stripped down from everything. They were led away into Assyrian captivity. You know, these people were taken captives, naked and barefoot, you know. They'd taken everything. Pretty much everything was being stripped away. And it was leaving absolutely no choice for these people but God. And they ain't listening. And you look at them and you go, well, those big old dumb stupid people, what's wrong with them? Well, what's wrong with us? Because we've left no choice either but God. And every day we go our own way. Every day. Maybe a little bit, maybe a lot. But we decide what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and never consult God till it goes wrong. Right? I don't know. Doesn't leave a whole lot of good thought in there about us sometimes either, does it? So that's chapter 20. And we'll start 21 next week, I guess. I'm going to tell you, this prophecy stuff will give you lots of brain fog in it. And it gives you a lot of hints to stuff, but it's also so very deep. It's like studying the book of Revelation. You think you understand it, and you read stuff that these really, really wise Bible theologians have wrote about the book of Revelation, but you still don't really know what some of the stuff means, you know. And that's kind of the way it is with this stuff here. You just kind of got to take it as it is, work the best out of it that you can, read a couple of these smart people's minds, and see if you can come up with something that you can kind of make sense out of. And so that's what we're doing. I guess if we all could understand all this, maybe we would do a lot better sometimes. Huh? But anyway, that's what we got, and that's all I can do sometimes with the brain I got. So that's what we're going to go with, I guess. If anybody else wants to do prophecy, you just let me know. I'll let you ease right on up into this slot right here on Wednesday night. So, all right. Everybody good? Well, maybe not a good words. Everybody all right? Let's ask that. How about that? Okay.